This is the Montana Outdoor Podcast. Each of our podcasts will introduce you to fascinating topics and some of the most interesting people you will ever find in Montana's great outdoors. We offer new podcasts most every Saturday. You can get a link to these podcasts by going to montanooutdoor.com or by going to the Montana Outdoor Facebook page. You can also send an email to downrigger@montanooutdoor.com and simply say, "Send a link to my email." It's that simple. Now let's head out with your host, Downrigger Dale, and see what's going on in Montana's outdoors.
You're listening to the Montana Podcast. We're out here in the outdoors, and, well, I've been looking for the captain, and sure enough, I found him. He's still over in Fort Peck, Montana, one of his favorite places. And, Captain, you've got a couple very interesting guests on board here with us today. Why don't you introduce your guests? And, folks, especially you couples, we're going to have a little fun today, and we'll see if you recognize yourselves in our discussion here. Captain, who we got on out there with you in Fort Peck?
All right, Rigger. We have Don Wilkins and we have Betty Wilkins, and they happen to be husband and wife. And what we're doing is we're going to find out how they became husband and wife, if they still love each other when they're out there enjoying the great Montana outdoors. Don, hello, and thanks for showing up here for the podcast. We appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
Don was on the Montana Outdoor Radio Show earlier in the summer as we did Chinook salmon fishing, as we were on Bill Zarotka's boat. He's a salmon slayer, and we've nicknamed Don Salmon Slayer, too. His lovely wife, Beckie. Beckie, thanks for joining us here.
Hi.
You are married to Don, and it seems to me, as long as I've known Don, I don't know you as well, that Don seems to be married to fishing.
50% of the time, yeah.
Okay, so...
well, and the other thing, Beckie, I wanted to ask you is your eyesight okay? Because I'm looking at you, and I'm looking at Don, and you picked him for a husband. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
So, yeah, go ahead, Captain. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're supposed to give me some sort of a signal when you're going to jump in there.
Oh, okay. How's that one? Is that one good?
There you go. That's perfect
okay.
signal. Yeah.
I'll let our listeners guess what signal I gave him.
Now, we're going to talk to Don about fishing techniques and everything else. Not that Beckie doesn't know fishing techniques, but I first want to go back. How long have you guys been married, Beckie?
We have been together for, this will be year 9 we've been together. So.
And you moved to the Glasgow area or Wolf Point area. Where do you actually reside?
We reside in Glasgow.
Okay, so you're in Glasgow, and you come from the Northwest Montana.
Originally, I did. I came from the Columbia Falls area and then moved to Billings as a young kid.
Okay, so when you met Don, you were working for
UPS.
And Don is a UPS driver as well. And so you guys both drove for UPS. And did you drive for UPS up there in Northwest Montana?
I did not. I moved to Glendive, and then he followed shortly after, and that's where we met. It was in Glendive.
Oh, okay. So how well did you know Don before he popped the big question getting married? I mean, you know how you know guys, and sometimes guys will maybe put up a different front. Maybe they don't tell you all the hobbies. I mean, what do they say? They say that women change, and then they want to change the guy. Have you ever heard that saying?
I have heard that saying. I knew from maybe day 2 that he was all outdoors.
And you had no problem with that?
No problem with it.
And you look forward to spending time with him in the outdoors?
I do. I enjoy going outdoors and spending time with him. I enjoy going out on the boat, minus salmon season.
What is your favorite? Like, for example, my wife will not spend any time on the boat with me hardly anymore because I burn her out. I used to, when I go fishing, I like to go out there for about 8-9 hours at a time. Does that bother you when you're out there with your husband?
Well, we try to make an agreement before we leave of what time we're going to leave, which, give or take about 3 or 4 hours. We're usually on time.
You mean what time you're going to come off the water?
What time we're going to come off the water.
same thing with my wife, but it never works out that way because there's always something going on where maybe we should try this spot over here.
Yep. Yeah. All the time.
And then she would say, well, I said, well, yeah, that's only going to be like a half an hour more. And then it's another half an hour more. Now, does that sound familiar?
Oh, every time we go. Yep. Every time we go.
And so how does she handle that?
I think she's used to it more than anything now. And if I say noon, that typically means dark, and anything after noon is also dark. So usually it takes dinner, typically at the gateway or the marina, to kind of smooth things over. Then we're okay.
Do you have any girlfriends, Becky, that you talk to and they go, how can you stand to go fishing that long or that much? It just seems to me that sometimes, especially in the eastern part of the state, it seems like the women are more adaptable. Now, I'm going to get in trouble for saying this than they are in the other part of the state. As far as spending time, they figure if I don't go out and enjoy the great outdoors with my husband, I'm probably not going to see him very often.
That is true. I really do enjoy spending time with him. So
do you add anything when you're on the boat? I mean, while you guys are fishing, you fish with him long enough. And the one thing I've learned a little bit about Don is that he likes to start something and he doesn't know much about it. Salmon fishing was that way about 4 or 5 years ago here at Fort Peck. And he's like a sponge. He got a hold of Bill Zaraka and he'd communicate with him back and forth. He would be listening and asking questions with Bill and another anglers. And is that something that you do as well?
I do not. I don't. I just kind of piggyback off of him. And when he's going out, I go out. It's just.
You've never said, for example, when you're out there salmon fishing, hey, we should maybe look at that fish finder, look at that sonar. Let's put these things down about 85 feet and try this little gadget that looks like something that I would love to wear as an earring.
Maybe not so much salmon fishing, but when we are lake trout fishing, I have my spots. I know where I want to go, and
now
usually I find some fish.
Becky, Captain brought up that Don is like a sponge. Now, when you first met him and all that, did you view him as like a sponge as far as? Because I know my ex-wife used to call me a sponge, but for another reason.
I didn't think he was a sponge, but I knew he was relentless.
He's relentless.
If he wants to figure something out, he'll figure it out.
Rigger, what ex-wife are you speaking of?
Oh, I think it was number 2 or 3. I can't really remember, but
yeah.
But I kind of feel like I'm Bob Eubanks here on the Newlyweds Show, and we're gonna see if they match up the same stuff. But to me, I think we run across this kind of stuff in the outdoor life a lot, and when a guy's passionate about getting outdoors and fishing and hunting and all that, I mean, I've literally seen marriages blow up because of it, because the wife just is not into it, or it could be vice versa. But so, Becky, were you attracted to Don because of his love for the outdoors and getting out and fishing and all that, or did you just share the same passion for it?
I wouldn't say I shared the same passion at first, but I was willing to give it a shot at, going out and doing the fishing and the hunting, and I really enjoyed it.
Okay, so you found out, all right, this guy's onto something. He likes that.
I like going outside, and it's just a lot more things to do. It's always something to do.
So your first outdoors date, was that fishing or hunting?
You know what? We just went down to the river.
Went down to the river. Okay.
We went down to the river and drank some beers.
There you go.
You did what?
Went down to the river and drank some beer.
Oh, drank some beer. Okay.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. I was going to ask the obvious, was it love at first bite? But if you weren't fishing, I guess that wouldn't have been.
Shortly after that, we started catfishing down on the river. So
there are couples that they have, in fact, they call it mixed couples on tournaments. I don't recall seeing you guys fishing any tournaments. Is there a reason for that, Don?
I guess we don't really get into a lot of the walleye fishing tournaments. We have went and fished several ice fishing tournaments. In fact, the last year that Eddie had the ice fishing tournament up at Fort Peck, Beckie won first place for the walleye with just over a 10-pound walleye that year. So,
oh, wow. That was the 48 hours on Fort Peck.
Yep. And she was in third place with the lake trout till like 30 minutes left in it. So we do go out and fish quite a bit of the ice fishing tournaments and those types of things. But boating and the walleye end of it, we've never really got real dedicated to just that type of fishing.
You know, with Rigger and I, we like to fish together. We've been fishing long enough together that we kind of know each other's tendencies. I'm in the front of the boat, and I am hard of hearing. He talks a lot. He's in the back of the boat, and that's really good because I can't hear much what he's saying. But I just nod once in a while, and I know if it's really important. He's one of these jibber-jabber guys, you know. I know if it's really important, he'll come up to the bow of the boat and ask me a question. But, Don, what do you get from Beckie? She said she doesn't really give you any insight on what you should do and how you should fish and that. Is it just a comfortability of having your wife with you?
I think so. You know, she doesn't say a lot about what I'm doing, but she's always picking something different. You know, I don't really ever pick what she's going to use fishing anymore. She's got pretty much taken all of my fishing gear, so I don't have any left anyhow. So for me to suggest something for her to use would be futile. She has about 6 or 7 tackle bags, and I'm using a piece of corn and a bobber on the side of the boat. So
I shop out of this tackle box.
Yeah, but you know, getting back to like her picking her own spots, you know, I bought a new one of those ion electric ice augers this year, and we were out, and I'm fishing, and all of a sudden I hear the door on the Can-Am shut, and it fires up, and Beckie's following the map around, and picks a spot where she wants to fish, and drills a hole, and not within 5 minutes, I just hear fish, and I'm like, life is over now. And she sat there and caught 6 Lakers out of that spot, and that's where she caught that salmon out of the spot that she picked the jig, picked the hole. So I'm just a ride along now.
You know, that's amazing that you would pick it up and take the initiative to do that. In fact, what Don is referring to is that they caught, and if you saw the MontanaOutdoor.com, the photo, they were fishing for lake trout. You were fishing for lake trout. You saw some fish about 65 feet. You were in 85 feet of water, and you hooked this salmon. What did you think about that? Because it ended up being a 10-pound salmon. You had the gear. The line was enough pound test to handle that salmon, but it had to really be something when you saw that salmon through the ice hole.
I thought Don was going to pass out because he saw it first. He said some choice words that we probably shouldn't say here.
Yeah,
we got that. It was a fight, and I had no idea what I had on the line, but knew it wasn't a lake trout.
So did he gap it through the hole?
Yep.
And sometimes the gapper doesn't work real well, but evidently he did do a good job gapping that.
He doesn't allow me to gap because I don't do it very well.
Well, hey, guys, I know we're talking about the couple thing and that, but I do have a quick question on that for you, Don. You know, I have never caught a salmon, for people that may not be familiar with Fort Peck that have just found this podcast. It's one of the few places in the lower 48 that actually have king salmon in the lake in Fort Peck. But, you know, just fighting one of those king salmon out on Fort Peck in just open water, when you're fighting something like that in the ice, is it hard to get the control of that salmon right to the hole? Because, an ice hole isn't that big. I mean, how difficult was that?
Why would you ask Don the question, Don?
Because he had to gaff it, is what I'm saying, is how did he get to that, get it there?
Well, I thought the question was, how did it fight under the ice?
No, I'm asking to get it to the hole so you could get it up through the hole. Those are big fish.
Right, with 10-inch hole. Go ahead, Don.
With the short rods, it's pretty tough, but she did a great job and kept the line. The big thing is trying to keep that line in the center of the hole because they just want to sit there and go in a circle, and you just keep trying to get their head started up the hole, and then you kind of have them. at that point, they're still flipping their tail and they kind of push themselves up a little bit, but trying to get the gap in them is the hard part.
Hmm. Becky, were you pretty sure that you had a salmon with the way it's fighting, which I imagine an ice fishing rod, those little rods, that had to feel strange.
It felt strange, but I had no idea what I had on there.
Okay.
No idea. I figured it was going to be a lake trout when I reeled up to it. But.
Mm-hmm.
So let's take it a step further. If you had saw the salmon, and let's say you would have screwed up on the gapping, or she would have done something wrong, would there have been some cuss words, and would it have been a situation where the marriage would have been tested at that time? Who has the biggest temper when it comes to getting fish so you can get a photo of it?
That would be Don.
Easily me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, easily.
I mean, is it something, Becky, that do you ever, like, under your breath go,
I'll get upset, but not nearly not nearly to the extent that he does.
Yeah, same thing with Downrigger. He does the same thing. He gets very upset, and he just stomps and he.
Well, I just look at it, Captain, that here you are. You've been we've been fishing for 30 some years together, and you still haven't learned how to net a fish, and that's the part that just makes me crazy. But I imagine with couples fishing, and I've witnessed this, that there are those certain key things in outdoor life, especially in fishing life, that I have seen marriages be tested. One is backing the boat down the ramp, and the other is netting the fish. So let's start with backing the boat down the ramp. Who backs the boat down the ramp usually? Is it you, Don, or Becky?
No, Becky does, and she
right on.
She's probably one of the best ones I see down there doing. I
All
don't
right.
have to say stop here or stop there. She knows we've done it enough. She knows right exactly where to stop the trailer and where to get me off the trailer when we're launching.
Yeah, I've seen marriages end on the boat ramp.
Yeah.
And then how about netting? Who is the better netter of the two of you? Becky, I'll let you answer that one.
That would be Don.
Okay.
I struggle. I got a couple short arms and a little tough to net.
So when she misses a fish, Don, what's your reaction? Do you forget she's your wife and start like the way the captain berates me if I miss a fish, or are you guys able to work that out? Because I know that the excitement gets there, and then the tension hits when that beautiful fish goes off the rod and down it goes.
Yeah, there's been a couple of times where the tension was there, but I can't remember a time that we didn't end up getting the fish in the net. So.
Hey,
that's yet to come, I guess.
You guys might be able to be like outdoor counselors for other couples, I think. Because boy, I've seen.
I don't know about that. I've seen some fishing poles be thrown. By both of us.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But what's also unusual is that you'll go out there and ice fish. I mean, when I say it's unusual, because it's cold. Obviously, you have clothing that you wear that keeps you warm. So after you caught that salmon, what then took place? Maybe you should explain that to us, Don.
Like right after it?
Yeah, right after you put that salmon on the ice. What happened with you when you were fishing?
Oh yeah, I just walked over a little ways from her and was fishing, and we were just kind of still dumbfounded at Becky's salmon. And she's super excited and didn't even care. It was time to go home because you don't see very many of them. But we continued to fish, and I was sitting there and caught a couple Lakers, and Eddie Mitt rolled up with his shirt, and I set the rod down to go take a look at that, and Eddie says, well, you have a fish coming up here off the bottoms. I run over and grabbed the rod and started cranking up, figuring it was another Laker, and it hit it and missed it and reeled it up and hit it again, and we started fighting it, and pretty soon Eddie looks in the hole and he says, this is another salmon. And I said, we can't lose this because you're going to see her face when we pull this thing out. And, Eddie gassed it and we got it out. And, of course, the very first thing that Becky did when I took mine over there was got the scale, and hers was bigger, and we all knew about it immediately. So,
right.
But yeah, it was pretty cool. I think within 30 minutes we had two of them out on the ice. I still can't believe we got two of them.
Just so we're clear, mine was bigger though.
What's that?
I said, just so we're clear, mine was bigger.
Yes, it looked bigger.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if it wasn't the photographer. That was a bigger fish.
Yeah.
One of the things that's also kind of a little bit unusual is that your husband, Don, gets up, I don't know what time in the morning, but he hits the water in open water. He hits it about, what time do you get on the water?
Salmon fishing, I'll be on the dock at 4:30 usually.
4:30 in the morning. Now, I don't see you in the boat very often because he works during the day. He has to get off the water at what time?
Usually I can probably go till about 9 in the morning if I want to before work.
And of course, that's what he does. He works for UPS, and now if he does know his first 4 or 5 stops, he can always call him and say, "I'm going to be a little bit late." But I don't ever see you out there when he's. Now I'm not out there at 4:30 either, by the way, but I do see him out there because we get out there about 6:30 or so because downrigger is so slow in the morning.
Yeah. Hey, Captain, could you turn Don's mic up just a little bit? There. Thanks. Okay, go ahead.
Well, I usually just go out on the weekends because I start work at about 7 in the morning. So I don't have time to go out and play first thing in the morning.
So I noticed one day Don had a heck of a day. He had caught 5 salmon, which is your limit for the day. And that was in the afternoon. I mean, during the day. Actually, he took, when Don takes a vacation, I don't know if he goes anywhere else, but he had a vacation that week and he was fishing out of Fort Peck. And you joined him for a couple of those days, but he called you to meet him at the fish cleaning station so you could help clean those salmon. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think he calls me to get him off the water to back the trailer down, and then we go out to the fish cleaning station. I'm not a lot of help up there. Just moral support.
So when you back a trailer down, just for downriggers, he's put the trailer at Fort Peck Marina on the rocks. And he blamed the rain. He said, I wanted to get you off the water.
That was a driving rainstorm that I couldn't even see out the back window of the truck.
It doesn't make any difference. He kept on backing up.
Oh, yeah. I just kept going. I figured you'd yell sooner or later, and you did.
So, do you use your mirrors?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
See, that is the proper way to back up a trailer, is you use the mirrors. How did you learn to do that?
I have driven tractor trailers, so I knew how to back a trailer. Gosh, it had to be about 10, 15 years now. So.
Wow. I bet you that's something you can brag about when you get together with the girls.
That I back a trailer?
They should have.
I've offered to show some guys how to do it.
We should have a back the boat trailer contest for people.
That'd be a good idea.
That would be
but
fun.
I know right now, just hearing all the stuff Becky does outdoors, and that there's a lot of single guys listening to this podcast right now that are wanting to know if you have any sisters or anything. That is awesome. Driving tractor trailer and back it up and all that. How about kids? Do you guys have kids?
We do not have kids together, but we each have kids.
Okay. So as a family, do the kids go out with you guys much?
Not much. The majority of them are grown.
Okay.
Or into their own thing.
Yeah. Yeah, we did. Well, we're going to do a podcast here about the fact that youth are not getting involved in fishing and hunting, and so I'm just kind of curious on that. If your kids, when they were or now or younger, if they found fishing and hunting interesting, or if they're like a lot of kids today that just never got into it.
My daughter comes over from Washington with her granddaughter, and we'll go out in the boat and fish quite a bit. In fact, this year, her and I went out, and she got her first salmon. Was a 19-pound salmon we caught along the face of the dam this year. So when she does come up, she loves to get out in the boat and fish. It's just, her responsibilities when she's at home. She just doesn't have time. But, when she was up here, we used to go down and fish the river and stuff quite a bit. So she liked being outside, but, typical kids, you got to mix it up a little bit.
Our granddaughter, Lauren, absolutely loves to be out on the boat with Grandpa.
Yes, she does.
It's one of her favorite activities.
Great.
I think that I've seen your granddaughter out there.
Yeah, I can't miss her. She's a little spicy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, ice fishing is something that you do quite a bit. I mean, you salmon fish, you also walleye fish. Of all the fishing that you do, Don, what is your favorite, and why is it your favorite?
I would probably be going out and chasing lake trout around. You know, we don't troll for them a lot, but we do a lot of vertical jigging for them. And for me, it's just kind of hard to beat the fight that you get from those fish. As long as you're doing it in May, June, when the water's cool, you're not really hurting the fish too much. Once it gets warmer, you know, obviously then we're salmon fishing and stuff like that. So we kind of leave them alone later in the summer. But I think it's just a fight, you know, and Beckie and I have a lot of fun. It gets pretty competitive when you get over a big school of them lake trout, and we're both down there trying to get that one fish to bite that comes up. And that usually turns into me buying dinner at the end of the night because I lose 90% of the time.
We have competitions every time we go out.
Yeah, there is. There's some type of competition. We have some kind of rules that we set out, and loser buys. And typically it'll end up with her winning or a tie, which then turns into rock, paper, scissors, which I haven't won in 9 years. So,
So she already has your tackle.
well,
Does she have all the money too?
mostly, yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, with you guys, I mean, obviously we've established that as a couple, you love to get out and enjoy all that Montana has to offer, especially getting out on the Fort Peck and that. One of the things with this podcast that I've got a lot of emails from people, and a lot of people are listening to the podcast that have never even tried fishing before and have found it really interesting. In fact, I had an interesting phone call from one of our listeners today. As a matter of fact, it said, I've never even tried any of this, but I listened to your entire podcast. We were talking about, it was the podcast with Eddie Mint, and she was just fascinated with it. So what advice could you give couples just of why it would be a good idea to get out there as a couple and do that? I'll start with you, Don.
You know, it's just a chance to get out and kind of get away from all of the hectic stuff I think that, you know, everybody deals with during the week. That's probably my favorite thing about getting out there, you know, early Saturday morning, and there's not a lot of people around and it's quiet. And maybe that's one of the things about ice fishing out on Fort Peck I like the most is you can drive out to Bear Creek or Bobcat or Bee Marker and you literally can't see a person anywhere and you won't hear anybody. And I think it's just good for Beckie and I. You know, working at UPS can be kind of hectic and you just get out there and you can kind of decompress. And I think that's probably one of the best things. It's just relaxing, you know, getting out there.
What about you, Beckie?
I would say pretty much the same. It gives you a chance to be together, but doing something without, there's not a lot of stress. It's very relaxing being out on the boat or even out on the ice. Just, you don't have to worry about anything else. It's just enjoy your time.
Because you both drive for UPS, you don't like banter back and forth. Boy, that was a heck of a package I delivered to Joe Snow's place. You know, I didn't think I was going to be able to get out of the truck and use it. I got the two-wheeler. I mean, do you have any ever conversations like that?
We talk a lot during the day. It just gives us something to do, something to pass the time between, 30-mile shots. It gives us a lot of lot of time to talk, and that also becomes a competition on whose day's worse or whose day's better, or
So let me ask you a question, Don. When the lake trout aren't biting, and I've heard people say they were really chasing, but they wouldn't bite.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Usually we'll just kind of change up some of the lures that we're using. Something smaller is usually what it takes. Or sometimes, a lot of the times we will see those fish chase. And what we have found is if we just start bringing our gear up, like the jigs or whatever we're using, we'll bring them up 10, maybe even 15 feet off the bottom, and we'll just leave them sit. And then the fish that do come up, 90% of those will probably bite, and you get away from those ones that just want to chase it up and down and up and down and up and down. So that's one thing that works
when
really
you're talking about that, how do you know these fish are moving around? What kind of sonars do you use?
Well, we have some hummingbird graphs that we use, and you can see your jig, and then you can see the fish, either come up fast off the bottom or whether they're coming up slow off the bottom, and you just get to where you can kind of see the attitude of the fish and decide whether it's one that you need to try to catch or just let it do its thing and it'll sink back down.
You can tell the attitude of the fish that deep.
Oh, yeah. You can tell by the way they're moving off of the bottom, whether it's kind of a really slow arc or more of a steep angle up to your jig. If it's coming up steep, then that fish is probably going to want to bite. And the ones that are slow, they don't.
Becky, do you have a sonar that you watch as well?
I do.
And do you look at the same things that he's looking at?
I do. You can tell what the fish are doing way down there. If they're not biting, I usually change my jig color. I'll use the whole rainbow in the tackle box until I find something that it'll bite at.
Right. Yeah, right. Your tackle box.
His tackle box.
How long do you wait to change? Because that's Captain and I've been fishing a long time, and when we'll even argue a little bit about, don't be so impatient that, quit changing so much and all that. How long do you wait, Becky, before you say, nah, this isn't working, I'm changing out?
Just until I get irritated that they're not biting.
So
it could be anywhere from a minute to 5 minutes.
So it just depends. Now, Don, how about you? Are you similar as far as changing out your lures and that? If it's not working, or are you more set in, I'm going to stick with what I got?
When it comes to fishing for Lakers, I'm probably more stubborn. I have a certain combination that always works really good for me, so I always stick with that. When it comes to salmon fishing, probably a little more impatient. It'll look like a yard sale at the back of the boat by noon some days if it's not going well. So
I know that when you're salmon fishing out in the boat in the open water, you have come up with some interesting combinations. In fact, there's some Brad's cut baits that you were using that we were using 4 or 5 years ago catching fish, and you pulled them out, maybe dusted them off, and put them down there. And you also switch from an 8-inch flasher to an 11-inch flasher, or from an 11-inch to an 8-inch flasher. What's the reason for that?
I switched down to those 8-inch flashers mainly because we started to notice when we started getting in the days where there was a lot of fishing pressure, we weren't getting as many bites. So we started switching out to some of those 8-inch flashers and some smaller Brad's cut plugs and some spoons, and just made everything not quite so flashy down there, and it really turned into having some pretty good days out there fishing. So
I do want to touch on one thing, downrigger, with Don. He has been nice enough when he finds what they call a gas pocket out here at Fort Peck, he will send a text to me. He'll also put it on his Facebook, warning people about where this gas pocket is. And explain to the folks what a gas pocket is on Fort Peck.
It's just natural gas that's bubbling up out of the bottom of the lake, and just doesn't give that area an opportunity to freeze. And this year we have snow and frost on the lake, so they're fairly easy to see if you're not, flying across the lake. But the first one that I found a couple weeks ago, I went back down there, and that one has went from about a 10-foot hole to about 2 or 3 feet. And then now we have some below zero temps coming. And it's marked, but those are the ones where it's going to get a skin of ice over it, and not just driving over it, you could probably walk over there and go through. So you just can't stress enough to people to just always check the ice out there.
So, Don, why is it that gas, so it's probably just methane coming up from the bottom of dead plants and all that. So is that just warm enough that's what's thawing that out then? Because, you'd think, boy, if the water's freezing and all this stuff, can that gas really be that much warmer? Have you ever put your hand in there and felt the water? Is it warmer than most, or what? I've always wondered that.
I'm not brave enough to get that close to it, so I'm not sure. But there's like the one that I found last weekend, there's a lot of movement. There was a lot of bubbles. I was surprised at how much was coming out of there.
I saw the video of it, yeah.
Yeah, I assume with it coming down from the bottom of the lake or up from the bottom of the lake like that, it probably is warmer, and that's why. Because it's actually a pretty big area. It's not just where the bubbles are coming up, but then there's also a big circle around there that's open, and then you can see that the ice around it is also thin. So there's got to be a little bit of warmer temperature there too.
Are they pretty easy to recognize when you come upon them, or I mean, is it possible that someone could just walk right into one of them?
Well, if it had a skin of ice over it, they would be tough to see. But the ice around this, where you can see was thin, was kind of real dark looking. So the whole circle around it doesn't look like the rest of the ice. So I wouldn't say it's so obvious that you would just notice it. It's still something you would want to be watching for. But anytime you see something where there's a significant change in the ice, you should be kind of skeptical and at least check it with your spud bar.
Okay.
How fast when you're going with your side-by-side, you have a side-by-side, you have a snowmobile, do you go on the ice?
Once we get a good trail, like, we have I have a Hummingbird on the dash of my side-by-side, and it's got the GPS. So when we make a trail, it makes a nice little red line on there that we follow pretty much the whole year. And as long as we're staying on that, I'll drive at a speed where I'm not shaking everything up out of the back of the truck. But when we start venturing off of that, then we're pretty cautious. And a lot of times we'll just get out and go out with a spud bar and check the ice and go on from there until we check it good. And then, I think 20 to 25 miles an hour is probably as fast as we go.
And so, Becky, when you're riding with Don, are you looking for these gas pockets as well?
Yeah, I got to keep my eyes open and look for anything that's suspicious.
Yeah, I mean, that's scary. I mean, there was a couple of snowmobiles or four-wheelers that went through last year around Haxby Point. And that's the first one that you actually brought attention to everybody was just south of Haxby Point at the B marker.
Yeah.
And then this one just recently is over at Bear Creek, and between Bear Creek and Bobcat, which is a pretty good distance, but
yeah, it's pretty much straight east of York Island on that shoreline between Bear Creek and Bobcat. But I'd mark that one with some markers too.
So back to the couples thing here, which to me, I just find it interesting that how well you guys have adapted as couples. Do you find when you're associating with other couples, do you tend to, hang out with other couples that are into the same stuff you are as far as ice fishing and that? Do you guys go out with other couples doing that too, or is this just kind of your guys' thing?
We'll go out with anybody that wants to come out with us. we have friends that'll come up and get on the boat and come out ice fishing. But if they're not around, we're still out.
Mm-hmm. And do you think, I'll start with you, Becky, do you think that sharing the outdoors with your husband and your husband sharing it with you, do you think that's made your marriage stronger, or is it just because the two of you are built that way?
Probably a little bit of both. I think it makes our relationship a little bit stronger because we do share the same interests.
Mm-hmm. And how about you, Don? And be careful how you answer this now, since she just answered a certain way. No, I'm kidding.
No, I think it's really healthy because, like I said, it just sometimes just the stress from the week and everything, and it just kind of builds up, and then by the weekend we get a chance to kind of get out and just kind of get away from it. And like Becky said, we talk a lot during the day. But one thing about it, once we get out and we're fishing or we're hunting or whatever, I don't know if we've ever had a conversation about work when we're out doing that. So It's just nice. It's like you get a little reset and start the week over.
So it's probably, you probably don't even look at yourselves as husband and wife. You probably look at yourself as buddies. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, he's my best friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, if you're talking during the day, when you're working, conversing what's going on, because you got 30 miles between stops. Understand, when you're a UPS driver in Northeast Montana, just give them an idea, Becky, how far you drive every day.
I drive just to get to work 56 miles. And then once I get to work, I usually put on anywhere from 250 to 350 miles a day working, and then 56 more miles back home.
Yeah, and people are still complaining they don't get their packages
Correct.
on time.
How about on the finance side of things for couples that might be listening to this, saying, maybe that is something we ought to get into? Could you guys give us kind of an idea of if a couple, say a young couple, wanted to get into fishing, what kind of budget do you think they'd need to set to be able to get out and have some fun with it? Don?
You don't have to spend a lot of money. Becky and I started out just with a few rods catfishing down on the Yellowstone, and we had a ton of fun doing that. So you can start wherever you want to start. You can start with just a sled. If you want to go out ice fishing, just get a sled and some tip-ups and buy a bucket of minnows and, pick some warm days and take the kids out and maybe set up an ice house and cook some food. And you don't have to spend a ton of money to get out there and have some fun fishing. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you're Becky, you just hang around the boat ramp. If somebody pulls up, you go, "Hey, you want me to back your boat in?"
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you're in the boat.
Now let's talk about eating what you catch. I'm one of those fishermen where I absolutely love to fish. I could go all day long. I love to fish, but I'm not a big fish eater. How about you guys? When you're out, you're spending all this time on the water, whether it's ice fishing or in open water fishing, do you tend to make and eat what you catch, or are you like me where I find people that love fish and I just give all my stuff to them? Go ahead, Becky.
I am not a fish person, so he eats it all.
Okay. Yeah, you're like me then. I'd rather eat meat, but I have a lot of friends that just don't get out on the water that love it when I come back from Fort Peck because they got some good eating going on when I get back.
Walleyes are delicious, but
yeah, they are.
Besides that, I'm out.
One of the treats that I'm going to treat the Wilkins to dinner after we get done with the podcast here at the Montana Outdoor Fort Peck headquarters. I guess we got to change the menu a little bit. Probably have a little no fish.
So you're going to make them dinner then, Captain?
Yes, I am.
I'm sorry, guys, but you can't. No, he makes pretty doggone good stuff. Last thing I'll ask you guys, as far as relating to other couples that might be listening to this podcast, for a good species of fish, in Montana we're super lucky because there's so many different species all around. And that, what would you recommend is a good species for a couple to get into and fish together? You talked about you started out with catfish. Is that a good one to start with, or walleye, or what would you recommend, Becky? What do you think?
Yeah, I really enjoy fishing for lake trout.
Okay.
But if I can't, I've been trying to get him to go catfishing again because it's just fun to hang out on the riverbank and relax.
Yeah, that is a lot of fun.
How about you, Don? What would you say is a good thing for a young couple to start out with to get into fishing?
I would agree with Becky with the river fishing and the catfishing it's really simple and it doesn't cost much to do. You can just drive just about anywhere and do it. You can sit on the bank and catfish down on the dredge cuts here up along the shoreline on Fort Peck. So if somebody wants to go fishing and wants to try it, I would suggest that probably.
Captain?
I really admire these two, and I admire all the couples that I know that fish, especially in this part of the country. It's really nice to see, and some of them actually get their kids out there as well, and that's always good to see. And they're taking pictures and they're putting on FaceTime. Not FaceTime, but Facebook. So yeah, I got to meet Don here this summer. I don't know Becky as well, but one of the things that I do want to do is continue the communication that I have with Don when he's on the water, especially salmon fishing, because salmon fishing, we kind of have a network of folks, and it's not as competitive. Like if a guy goes out and catches a limit of walleyes, you don't really want to tell them exactly where you're catching those. I mean, you're kind of giving a little question. But when you're fishing for salmon, it's it's a struggle, and sometimes Salmon and Don has been very good at trying to help other people out, including myself, and I appreciate that. And I just think it's great that these guys are living their dream here in Northeast Montana.
Yeah, I would say that for the salmon fishing, for you folks that have never tried it, and we are so lucky here in Montana to be able to have, king salmon and be able to go after them, because a lot of people have to travel a long, long, long way to be able to do that. And we're lucky. But once you get one on the line, even if you don't bring it in, you are pretty much hooked for life. I just love it. I can't get enough of the salmon fishing on Fort Peck.
Well, one of the things to keep in mind, Downrigger, if you don't get it in and you're a good Catholic, you got to go to confession on Sunday, because you probably said a few choice words after that fish went off the line.
Well, no, it's easy for me. If I don't get it in, it's your fault. That's how it goes.
That's right.
Well, you two, I want to thank you so much for being here. And for our listeners, you can always email me, Downrigger, at montanooutdoor.com. If you have questions for Don or Beckie, I'm always happy to pass them on, and I know they'd be happy to answer you and get involved. But I really do believe these guys are a great example of a couple that fishes together stays together. So thank you guys for
thanks for having us,
spending some time and educating us. Captain, any last thoughts before we go?
I just think that you just got to get out there, quit wishing, and go do some fishing. And I'm just curious of what they're going to get each other for Valentine's Day that's coming up. But we'll let that just be private between them.
It's probably some kind of fishing tackle, knowing these two. But anyway, folks, thanks so much for listening to us on the Montana Outdoor Podcast. Never a dumb question. And also, remember, if you want to keep track of any of our guests or just learn more about discovering Montana's great outdoors, head on to our website, montanooutdoor.com. You'll learn lots of it. And, of course, you can find us on the Facebook page. Until then, everyone, have a great time with the ones you love out there in Montana's great outdoors.
Thanks for listening to the Montana Outdoor Podcast. What do you think? We would love to get your feedback and also find out what other topics you would like us to cover. Just send an email to Downrigger at montanooutdoor.com with your thoughts and suggestions. Remember, we will usually have a new podcast available every Saturday, so be sure and check our website, montanooutdoor.com, for a link to our next podcast, or simply check our Facebook page. Also, feel free to share any of our podcasts with your friends. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you soon in Montana's great outdoors.